So applying techniques to assist the client group and her family in exploring problems and its ramifications. There's a lot of different ways that you can apply that. Applying the techniques. You know, some people may do really well with process and discussion. Some people may do really well with teaching and educating, presenting didactic information. Being able to match those people, that your counselors that are providing services to your clients, if they're good doing education, keep them in education, because that's where you're going to have the greatest impact. If they're better in process, keep them in process and keep the discussions going with the clients. Number 25. Here's a great check statement. Interact with the client in an appropriate therapeutic manner. Remember, we talked about in some of our core functions, we talked about engaging with them around signing releases, engaging with them around results of assessments, talk to them partnering with us in the treatment planning process, and now in counseling we talk about interacting with them in an appropriate therapeutic manner. So give me an example of a non-therapeutic manner.
Screaming at a client.
Doing what?
Screaming at a client.
Oh, that's what I thought you said. That's a great one. Anybody ever heard one of your colleagues scream at a client? Well, in modeling appropriate behavior too, because I don't think, and pardon me if I cut you off, but there's instances, I mean, we're not a perfect lot, and there's instances where things may set us off in a certain way, and we may say something we regret, but being immediately mindful of what we just said and say, you know, I really apologize, I said that. Now, it wasn't my intent. I should have chosen my words better than that, you know. So, and that's modeling appropriate behavior, because that's what, I mean, we really expect people to do, is to be appropriate and mindful of the decisions that they're going to make, you know. And that's, you know, the two final keys with counseling in 26 and 27 of the global criteria: eliciting solutions and decisions from the client. So in all of your counseling processes, if you could sum it up into one thing you want to have happen, is you want to elicit solutions and decisions from the client. And even in sharing with the client, what our discussions are going to be based on is the expectation of eliciting solutions from you that are going to help you make different decisions in your life. You don't always want to be in a treatment program. We have a treatment plan that's set for a specific set of time, and we want to accomplish some goals. And to do that, this is the process that we'll be following. And you know, so many times I've said that to clients, and they're like, wow, thank you. You just empowered me with being responsible, you know. And then the last one, it all ties back to the implementation of the treatment plan. Everything we do with the client ties back to the treatment plan. The treatment plan is the contract between you and the client towards them becoming successful with the appropriate outcomes of what was decided on the treatment plan, going back to the problems and the long and short-term goals. And if you're tying all of that back to the treatment plan, and always, it helps too to be able to tell the client, you know, what we're talking about right now, how does that tie into your treatment plan? You know, because there's lots of times clients will engage you in discussions that really are not treatment focused, and will really try and pull you out of your scope, your sphere of influence. And a good way to bring it all back in is to say, how does that tie into your treatment plan? You know, because if it ties into your treatment plan, then we're having a discussion. If it doesn't, then we're not, you know. Okay, case management, the fun part. Now, for those of us that were able to experience services before we chose to come into this profession, We got to, earlier on today when I was talking about, we got to see the counselor come in and do their great groups, or we had this phenomenal, empowering individual session with them, but we never saw the behind-the-scenes activities that took place. In the case, in managing my treatment episode, who'd ever thought of that? You know, by the time I got into this profession and I was down the road for a while and had made a definite life decision to change careers, and I found out about this stuff, I was like, oh man, I thought it was going to be easier than this, you know. I just wanted to go in and talk to people and, you know, get them to feel good about changing their life and, you know, having to deal with files, forms, processes, charting, and more charting. Because if it's not charted,
It didn't happen.
oh, you guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. And that statement, you know, if it's not charted, it didn't happen. You know, I don't know how many, you know, folks where I work, you know, it's like they always wait for that statement, you know, because they know. We need to ingrain that in ourselves. You know, every activity, every conversation we have, well, not every conversation, but certainly every activity should be charted in the client's record. Why? So many reasons why. You know, so many reasons why. Why? Because we're respectful of our client. We're respectful of the work that they're doing. And what if we don't show up tomorrow? Somebody needs to know about our client. Somebody also needs to be able to bill for the services we're providing them, or at least provide a record that those services have been provided. It's a key. But more importantly, case management creates a continuity of care, a seamless continuity of care, so the client doesn't understand. They see you come into the group, they see you in the individual session, they don't experience what all is happening behind the scenes in support of their success. Two easy criteria that are very important is the coordination of services for client care. Coordinating their client care. There may be lots of things in our treatment program that we don't provide, that we know we need to get that client so that they can be successful. And what's one of the main things for our clients? Dental care. They come into our client. I mean, how many times it happens, especially in residential care, a client comes in, stabilizes, detox a little bit, and all of a sudden, oh my God, they got an abscessed tooth. Well, you know, they haven't been to the dentist in the last 10 years, so they get a little bit of stability. They're not anesthetizing themselves, right? And their body reacts. And they have an abscessed tooth. Oh my God, I don't know how many times I've seen that happen. Well, you got to get them dental care, because if you don't, how are they going to pay attention to what you're doing? How are they going to learn to change their behavior? They're going to blow out of treatment. You know, or a client comes into you in their outpatient treatment. I lost my job. I think I'm going to lose my apartment. I have to coordinate. I have to make some referrals for this individual, or they're not going to be able to be successful in treatment. Doesn't mean I got to take them house hunting, or I got to take them out job hunting. You know, but I might help them with, I might help them find resources to create a resume. I might hook them up with somebody who knows people in the community where they might be able to find a job or a house. Case management, coordination of services. And if I'm referring a client somewhere, I want to explain to them why I'm referring them. I need to be mindful of that. Not only do I need to explain it to them, but I need to have a release for it too. Because if it's not documented, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Crisis intervention. Oh my goodness. So those services which respond to an alcohol or other drug abuser's needs during acute emotional and or physical distress. And then we look at the global criteria. Recognize the elements of a client crisis. What's something that comes up for somebody about a crisis for a client?
My boyfriend's cheating.
I mean, I know we could all tell lots of stories, but I mean,
Relationships.
huh?
Yeah.
Great one. Great one. Anybody here had to deal with a cutter before?
Oh, yeah.
That's definitely a crisis. Implementing an immediate course of action appropriate to the crisis. So if somebody says they feel like cutting themselves, am I going to call 911?
No.
Probably not. If I walk down the hall and a client's walking to me and they fall down and go into a seizure or something like that, then calling 911 is an appropriate response. For somebody who says, I feel like cutting myself, well, what are you going to do? Well, but first of all, you want to stabilize the situation, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
I actually had a situation.
So what that brings up for me is the importance of us having training in dealing with crisis intervention, specific training on how to deal with crisis intervention. Suicidality is a big one for the folks that we work with. Depression, how to gauge the severity of a crisis, and how to access resources, what resources to access. Specific training about how to do that. Most of us learn it on the job. But there are programs that provide specific training for that, and especially around how to deal with suicidality. If you ever have an opportunity to do one of those trainings, it's very, very in depth. Bless you. It can go for, you can do one-day trainings, two-day trainings, they even have week-long intensives where you learn to be an interventionist, suicidality interventionist. Very impactful in helping you make appropriate decisions. So learning how to deal with these crises is on our feet. And then coming up, this is like we talk about turning lemons into lemonade, you know, really, so the cutting incident and the lady now having 10 months sobriety, you can really take that incident and tie that back to the treatment plan, you know, and how her actions were not supporting the expected outcomes on the treatment plan, and were any of the issues of why she was cutting herself based in some of the problems that were in the treatment plan. So whenever you have an opportunity to tie that crisis that you had to go through with the client back to the treatment plan, it makes the treatment experience that much more impactful for the client. Because it's really, it's a shock. That type of behavior is really emotionally driven. And being knowing the moment and when to say it to the client. Of course, you know, you got an EMT standing over them or you're patching them up, is not really the time to have, you know, and how does this tie back to your treatment plan conversation, you know? So knowing when to have that discussion is extremely important, but understanding how behavior and consequences have choices, and keeping your client always mindful of that is very important. So,